Hello there, world of tankers, and welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Droodles Blitz, and in today's video, I'll be talking about the Waffenträger Alfie 100 and the future of its existence in World of Tanks Blitz. See, a lot of people think that this tank is going to absolutely destroy the game. It's going to make the 183 look like a baby. Is that the case? No. Not really. I've seen a lot of other content creators and opinions being spread around that this tank is the new beast of tier 10, able to deal 1700 damage in 5 seconds. It's super dangerous. And it is. There are certain moments when I've driven this vehicle and I have been able to absolutely annihilate an enemy opponent. But I've also been able to pull out tanks like the Minotauro, which are tier 10 Italian tech tree tank destroyer, and a Minnow can deal 1500 damage in a clip. Not only that, it has gun depression, it has armor, and it's a frontline tank. And not only that, we already have the 4005. The 4005 only has 60 less clipping potential than the Waffenträger Alfie 100, yet it has 20% better camo. It has an additional 400 more damage per minute, having a, 9 seconds less reload? I mean, that's insane there alone. It has really solid penetration. The gun is more accurate. It has better mobility, better gun depression. It has spall liner. In all intents and purposes, the 4005 is a flat better tank than the Waffenträger Alfie 100. And while this vehicle may be looked at as another 183, in reality, I don't really consider it on the same scale. And in today's video, I'll be showcasing what this tank can do, but I'll also be sharing my opinions on this vehicle and why I feel like it's actually not going to hurt the game at all. Normally, when Wargaming releases an autoloader, I'm always quite up in arms, as you guys know, because I'm against autoloaders. I think that they are bad for the balance of the game. Well, let me rephrase that. I'm not against autoloaders, I'm against poorly balanced autoloaders. The problem right now in tier 10 is that Wargaming allows autoloaders to have everything. Look at a VZ55. It's got mobility, armor, DPM, pen, accuracy. It's got it all. And because of that, it allows the VZ to be better than a single shot version of that tank. Why drive an IS-7 when I can drive a VZ55? You know, that's kind of the question. And that's not really the case for the Waffenträger Alfie 100. This vehicle features, 2900 DPM, which sounds like a lot, but in reality, it's basically the lowest damage per minute for a tank destroyer in tier 10. Not only that, but because it has such a large clip output, it suffers in terms of reload, sitting at 30 seconds of clip reload, which is absolutely insane. The gun is not accurate at all, and the camouflage is actually the worst for a tank destroyer in tier 10. The Jagdpanzer E100 and FE2 and 5B 183 both feature better camouflage. And not only that, the Jagdpanzer is, believe it or not, about 20% smaller than this tank. The roof of this vehicle is a solid foot higher than the Jagdpanzer. And when it comes to the width of this vehicle, the Jag has a concave design where its armor goes like this, where the Waffle goes like this, so it actually gets wider on the turret, and we can see that. The turret actually gets bigger. All these things added together with terrible camo values, a gun that isn't the most accurate, and also the fact that you have to spend 30 seconds, as I mentioned, to get that clip back, makes this an incredibly challenging tank to drive. Middleburg is, in my opinion, probably the worst map to play this tank on. Look at how far back I am. I'm almost at the red line. I don't have the gun elevation to work this spot here, so I'm at the closest spot I can sit with my tank from the red line. This is as far back as I could go. See this Kampfpanzer all the way over here? This tank all the way over here. This is how far away he is from me. Just look at that. This is how far away that Kampfpanzer is from me. Watch my tank. Light bulb. I'm spotted from that Kampfpanzer. That Kampfpanzer, I don't know exactly how far away that player is, but it's probably about close to 300 meters. But because this tank has such bad camo on move and while stationary, it basically means that you are going to be detected no matter what. Like, you're always going to be spotted. Which begs the question, what are you supposed to do in this tank on certain maps? Middleburg is a map that favors vehicles which feature gun depression when you go up the hill, and 9 times out of 10 your team does go up the hill. So you're stuck in this big box which has no armor, no spall liner, has an insanely dangerous clip, but you can't use it because you can't bring it frontline. And there you go. That's why this tank is not overpowered. Now, there are circumstances where it does very well. In fact, this game, you're going to see me actually carry a victory. But you're also going to see me get absolutely annihilated in like 5 seconds. Like this here. This is where the Waffenträger is incredibly dangerous. Chieftain makes an overpoke. I get 1 shell into the Chieftain. I get 2 shells into the Chieftain. And I get 3 shells into the Chieftain. It low rolled, but I still dealt 1,632 damage. Now again, the 4005 would have done the exact same damage there in the same amount of time. But look at my health. I was 1,924 health a second ago. Now I have 465. Because for some reason, the Beetle Bugler T110E4 decided to flank through their spawn. You can see I got an incredibly lucky bounce that hit me in the upper plate rather than the turret. If that shell had hit me in the turret right there, my game would have already been over. But it shows you just how quick things can go south in this vehicle. To deal the damage this thing does, you have to put it in a situation most of the time that also absolutely nukes you in the process. The other problem with this vehicle is the fact that it has 0 late game potential. Light tanks and most medium tanks, as we know, are pretty flexible in late game scenarios because of the fact they have mobility, they have view range, they have DPM. What are you going to do in this tank against a light tank in a late game situation? I can see most tank destroyers having at least somewhat of a decent fight, but the fact that this thing is so large and so out in the open, it's going to be nearly impossible to win late game battles. So, if you want my opinion, I don't think that the 4005 is bad for the game at all. In fact, I don't really mind its existence. I think that if I'm fighting 4005, or not 4005, sorry, Waffenträger Alpha 100. I'm so used to calling it the 4005 just because I've been comparing it to the 4005 a lot. But I really don't think that this tank is going to hurt the game at all. In fact, I don't have a problem with its release whatsoever. I actually hope I fight these things on the battlefield because it's a big, juicy chunk of hit points. I have fought about 5 of them so far today, and they just die instantly because they get spotted at the back of the map and then instantly die. I'm a pretty solid player, and even I struggled a bit when playing the vehicle today. I did a play 10, which you will see on the channel probably later this week, and in that play 10, I was able to average 4,000 damage for 10 games. But my win rate was 50% because the thing just can't get wins. So is it an overpowered tank? No. By no means is this thing overpowered. And is it toxic for the game? There are definitely circumstances where I think it can be toxic, obviously, but I think for the most part, this is actually not that toxic of a vehicle. If you have half a brain cell, you look at the enemy lineup and you say, oh look, they have a Waffenträger Alpha 100. And then you look at the map you're on, and you're like, okay, where would I hide my tank if I was the size of China? And that's all you have to do. There's not many spots that you can hide a vehicle this large with such bad camo. Usually, the only spots you would see this tank being played are in the back of the map. And if it tries to frontline, you're just going to nuke it in the turret. It's HEable at certain spots, only being 15 millimeters thick on certain parts of the turret. And because of that, I really just don't see this tank at all being hard to counter. And when you pair that with the fact that the thing takes 30 seconds to reload, it's a very easily pushable target. The moment you see that this tank dumped its clip, it's out. Like, it's out of the game for literally 30 seconds. That is about 10% of your average battle it is out of the game of. That's insane. So you do got to keep that in mind. So what do we have here? We got an enemy Jagdtiger. I got 1 shell into his tank, but I don't get another. I forgot to activate my shell reload boost there, so I only get 1 shot. Surprisingly, though, the Jagdtiger doesn't spot me. I would assume it's because it's a tank destroyer, and as we know, tank destroyers have less view range than the other classes in the game. But you can see how scared I'm playing this. The enemy team is a 183, they have a Jagdtiger, and they have a Leopard 1. That's not good for me. We have a full health Sharpie Chair 4, though, and we got a half health mouse, which means that, realistically, we should be in a pretty solid situation here. I asked my mouse where the enemy 183 was, and originally he said bush. I was like, yeah, that's really helpful. But then he said spawn 1, and I was like, there you go. That is a little bit more helpful to me. And there we have the enemy 183. So we can see I'm aiming in on him, but I want to be able to get the full clip. So I'm not just going to shoot the first shell, because then I'm going to have to start moving again. So I'm trying to put myself in a position where I can get the full clip into this 183, but then the Jagdtiger gets spotted. I'm like, yeah, I'll shoot the Jagdtiger. I put on my shell reload boost, I fire 1 blind shell at the 183, and I fire 2 blind shells at the 183. But again, because this thing's so large, there's nowhere I can hide it. So I just get shot right in the turret, and I end up dying. This was a pretty good game. I did 4,287 damage, but that's without adding in the blind shots. If we add in the 2 shells that I blind fired at the 183, I actually did 5,500, putting myself with an ace and a pretty solid result. But as you saw in this game, I didn't do anything that the 4005 couldn't have done. The 4005 would have done just as fine in any single situation here, if not better. And not only that, 4005 would not have been spotted in the back of the map by that Kampfpanzer 50-ton due to the 20% better camo. That is a huge disadvantage this vehicle does feature. I would much rather roll up against this vehicle on the battlefield than the 4005. Now, people might say, but what about this vehicle YOLOing you and being able to just YOLO clip you? Well, it's possible, but the chances of it are slim to none. This tank is not nearly as fast or maneuverable as the 4005, and as it has much worse camo values, it also means that it's going to be a lot harder to YOLO in this tank. It is so freaking large that I found it very hard to ever play this tank frontline. There are certain examples of when I was able to use it aggressive, especially on Desert Sands is a great example. Desert Sands, being a small map, allowed me to punish players when they would poke. I would use my shell reload boost, they would poke, and I go bam, 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 and take 1,700 off. And that felt great. But on maps that are larger, it's very tricky because you're constantly getting outspotted. The maps are still not huge, so things can flank you, and you run into a lot of issues. That all being said, I'm actually surprised that this tank isn't toxic, but I'm also glad that it isn't toxic. The average player is going to do absolutely terrible in this tank. To be honest, if you, the viewer, are one of those whales that ended up spending hundreds of dollars to get your hands on this vehicle, let me know what you think about it. But I'm quite confident to say you probably don't love it, because while the vehicle has these super dangerous damage outputs, like you just saw, I did 1560 to that IS-4, the problem is you sacrifice an insane amount of everything else to do it. But this is how autoloaders should be balanced. Autoloaders should be balanced in a way that if you're going to get an insane level of one thing, you should not have insane levels of everything else. As I said, the VZ55 right now is like 2,700 DPM. The Foch 155 has over 3,000 DPM. The 4005 is 3,400 DPM. The Rhino has 2,700 DPM. The Kron is 2,700 DPM. That's only 200 less damage per minute than this vehicle, and yet all of those tanks can frontline. But you know what they can't do? Well, this. 1 shell into the enemy 60 TP for 544, 2 shells into the 60 TP for 565, and another for 579. But look at that. The enemy Waffenträger Alpha 100 is sitting in the back there. So because of that, even though I did that insane clip into that 60 TP, just with 2 shells hitting my tank, I'm down to now 570 health. But, I mean, hey, 2 clips and I'm at 3,200 damage. So I can't get too mad. It is kind of crazy how quickly you are able to rip out the damage in this thing when you get those clips working. So we have the 60 TP, and look at that. The Waffenträger is spotted like all the way across the map. So what am I going to do this game? Well, I'm going to aim it on that Waffenträger. I was expecting me to be spotted, but I'm actually not here. So I see that he takes a blind shot, misses. I'm going to take another blind shot at him. I'm pretty sure that one hits, and then I back up. And you can see how easy of a target that thing is to hit. Even with my damage gunner, I still easily fired both of those shells into the enemy Waffenträger. Like, it's a very easy tank to catch out in the open. And that thing was spotted all the way in the back corner there as well. So a great example, once again, of the camouflage values being just absolutely dookie balls. Now, I do end up dying this game, and honestly, I made a bit of a poor play. I should have played a little more passive and tried to get some more damage out, because I could have done like a lot more this game. But I shoot 1 shell into the enemy O for 500, and the O shoots me in the track instead of the turret, bounces, and that puts me up to a pretty solid amount of damage. And what I did here is I was hoping that like I would shoot at the VK-72 through the building, but he had the same idea, and obviously it's not very hard to pen this tank, so I died. But if I had probably played it a little bit smarter, I could have waited and probably gotten behind the VK, but honestly, I don't think it would have mattered too much. The game was over by the time everything happened. So, taking a look at the post-game results, let's see how this game went. And it was a pretty good one. 5,469 damage. Did we hit both of our shells on the enemy Waffenträger? We did, dealing 1,300 damage in 2 shots. So we can see, like, the vehicle has really good damage output. 1,688 on the 60 TP, 1,560 on the IS-4. It's a dangerous tank. But at the same time, I'm not winning at all in it. as I said, my teams have been absolutely dookie balls. I'm at 3,100 average damage with 63% win rate. And it's why I've been having a little bit of a struggle to get damage out, is because in a lot of the maps you play, if your team sucks, you can't do anything about it. You're all the way in the back. It's Jover. Personally, I do feel like this vehicle should have a little bit more camo. It's my personal opinion, but I think that the camo values being so bad on it make it very hard to actually use, especially because of the size of the tank. So I think that if Wargaming gave it similar camo values to that of maybe the 4005, it would at least allow this vehicle to stay at the back of the map like a Grill 15 and maybe get out some shells without being absolutely spotted. But like, here's a great example of just how bad the camo values are. This is the last game I played in the tank today on Hellas. I want you to see how far away I got detected and how quickly I got annihilated for being detected. Because while this tank is at least somewhat maneuverable, it's not very maneuverable, and because of that, you run into problems. That Kron is 250 meters away. I'm sitting still with Camo Net active. That Kron spots me. If I was in any other tier 10, I would not have been spotted at that distance, but because I'm in this vehicle, I am spotted. And because of that, the enemy Leopard and 907 up top there are also able to shoot me. The 907 has tracer shells, which means that my tank gets lit up for 20 seconds, I get shot again, and now I'm down to 600 health. And I can't do anything now. I'm stuck here for like the rest of the game. So, very, very exciting stuff. But that's the downside of driving this vehicle. So, yeah, if you think that this is going to be the most overpowered tank, or you think that you are going to love this vehicle because of its clipping potential, I mean, maybe. If you're a player that averages 1,500 damage, then maybe YOLOing in this vehicle is the way for you. But in reality, I really don't think that this tank is anything too special. It definitely has a unique bit of fun going for it, but a lot of the games I played was more frustrating than fun because I was having to, like, play mental chess with the enemy on where I could find a spot to work this thing without being instantly annihilated due to the horrible camo values and size of the vehicle. I mean, look at the size of this tank to the 4005. Yeah, the 4005 is definitely... Actually, I wouldn't even say it's flat taller, but the 4005 is definitely similar height, as we can see. Both tanks are pretty similar on the height, but the difference between the 4005 and the Waffenträger is the width. Look at the width difference. Like, this tank is double the girth of the 4005. And as I said, look at the camo values. 65% versus 45%. It's not even close. So, you guys can let me know in the comments what you guys think about the Waffen F1. Personally, I think that it will be buffed at least a little bit in the future. I don't know how far down the road that future is, but maybe in the next tier 10 rebalance, so in a couple months when the stats of this vehicle get released, we will be able to see how the average player is performing in it. But I would assume that this is going to be one of the worst performing tier 10s. Honestly, I think I could do better in any other tier 10, reliably at least. You know, the problem is this tank is not very reliable. A lot of the games I played, it would be like one time I'd get on the map, I'd go great, and then the next game I get on that map, I'd want to kill myself. So, either way, let me know in the comments what you guys think about this vehicle. And yeah, if you'd like to see more content like this, I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye!